famed anthropologist Margaret Mead. If we are to achieve a richer culture, rich in contrasting values, we must recognize the whole gamut of human potentialities, and so weave a less arbitrary social fabric, one in which each diverse human gift will find a fitting place. The UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity affirms the value of cultural expression, diversity, and the right of nations to promote these expressions. Thus, the University of Houston advocates the resolution that states should maintain, adopt, and implement policies and measures that they deem appropriate for the protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions on their territory. We will advance three main points to support this resolution. First, cultural expression has inherent value that can't be understood economically. Second, states must protect and promote cultural expression as an essential element of sustainable development. And third, these measures will not disrupt trade. Contention 1, value of cultural expression. First, cultural expression is inherently valuable. As the International Federation of Arts, Councils, and Culture Agencies wrote last year, culture enhances the opportunities of all human beings. Access to and participation in culture is a fundamental right and an essential dimension of life. Culture enables individuals to live and be what they choose. Cultural activities are vehicles for identities, meanings, and values and are an essential dimension of life. Therefore, they must not be treated as solely having instrumental value. But despite these inherent values, cultural expression is put at risk by the forces of globalization. The alternative to protection and promotion of cultural expression is to allow the free market to determine cultural production. Markets cannot price the value of cultural goods because the economists can only think of aesthetics, identity, ethics, and many other intangible values as consumer preference, or what they would call externalities. The distributors cannot give a fair value to cultural expression as the author would. Dr. Valentina Vidi, Marie Curie postdoctoral fellow at the Faculty of Law at Maastricht University, writes, "Cultural goods cannot easily be provided by the invisible hand of the market. Cultural goods are characterized by market failures because their value is mainly historical rather than economic. The same applies to shipwrecks. Even historically important shipwrecks have been completely dismantled to recover scrap metals. The fact that they are not marketable does not imply that they do not hold cultural value. In cases of market failures, government intervention is not only necessary, but is desirable to improve the market mechanism. Because the market fails to adequately support cultural goods, governments should be able to intervene and ensure that cultural expression continues." Contention 2, protecting and promoting diversity. Thus, our second contention, states must protect and promote cultural expression. Countries have an obligation to address these market failures because otherwise cultural producers will be forced to abandon their work in order to survive. In fact, the International Fund for Cultural Diversity argued in 2012 that a lack of infrastructure and training opportunities means artists, cultural entrepreneurs, and practitioners struggle to access national, let alone international markets. This means the creativity of local artists is not nurtured and the benefits of cultural industries often remain unrealized, while globally, diversity of cultural goods, services, and activities, as well as choices of citizens, are jeopardized. In the absence of governmental support, cultural diversity will be determined only by the market winners. The effects of this elimination of diversity is not solely aesthetic or subjective. Culture is a critical resource for political and societal rights. The lack of cultural rights creates a vicious cycle that locks minorities in poverty. Thus, cultural diversity enables sustainable development for cultures globally. As Dick Stanley, Director of Strategic Research at the Canadian Department of Cultural Heritage, explains, culture embodies not only the past but also the future. Culture provides the community with the symbolic resources needed to debate, contest, and oppose vital directions for a collective social life. This is virtually a definition of inclusion and participation in any democracy. The poor remain trapped in poverty because they lack cultural resources to give voice to their needs. Culture provides the symbolic resources that people need to appropriate new meanings and skew them to their own welfare. Our position, which affirms the right to culture, promotes cultural capacity for all people, supported by their governments, to participate in sustainable development. Additionally, when we devalue cultural expressions, we also diminish how we value each other. For instance, Dr. Christophe Germain, visiting research at the Genocide Studies program at Yale University, argues that the convention could be a vital means of preventing mass atrocities. The UNESCO Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions could further development of international law and human diversity as a tool for early prevention of genocide and mass atrocities. The degree of acceptance of the diversity of cultural expressions can function as an indicator and early warning system for risks of tension that could lead to genocide and mass atrocities in a given society. Thus, the risks of cultural homogenization are substantial, especially for those who are already marginalized and left behind by globalization. Contention 3 is cultural trade. The negative will likely object to cultural diversity on the grounds that it somehow subverts global trade. Some context might help explain these issues here. The negative's position is the position of the United States, who is one of 2 countries that voted against the UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity, in opposition to 148 other countries who supported the convention. American opposition to the convention was pragmatic because the U.S. enjoys market dominance in cultural goods, but this self-interested justification is short-sighted and risks terrible consequences. At what cost are Americans willing to support market shares of Hollywood or publishing companies or Comcast? The affirmative position is that cultural diversity should be valued above the narrowed self-interest of media lobbies. The negative will claim that cultural support policies are protectionism. I suggest that you view these claims with some skepticism. 148 other countries do not think that these supports are protectionist. Further, the stubborn refusal to reconsider the value of cultural diversity means that the U.S. position will fail, as Kevin Schooley, JD from Brooklyn Law School, writes. The interest of the U.S. would be better served by dropping its fierce resistance to cultural exception. The U.S. should engage with the international community. Continuing its quixotic battle would only needlessly antagonize the global community, and in light of the overwhelming worldwide popularity of the cultural exception, any victory the U.S. might win at the WTO could damage the trade regime's legitimacy. In conclusion, a vote affirmative is a vote in favor of development of the diversity of cultural expressions. Cultural expression is inherently valuable, but these values cannot be provided by the free market and require government support for cultural goods. In order for our opponents to win, they will have to prove that narrow American economic motivations are more important than diverse cultural expressions. We believe that sustainable development and protecting against mass violence is more important than marginal market share that might be lost by the uber-rich American media corporation. And thus we urge an affirmative ballot.